Very welcome to the latest episode of The Racing Room. It's Ronan Groom hosting again this week with the usual crew of Anthony Kaminskis, Harry Stewart Moore, and Tony Calvin. Lads, the countdown is on. November 18th, Newbury Racecourse, the return of Constitution Hill. Who's he racing against? Who knows? But he's back. And cue minute by minute live coverage from the Racing Post. And we might even get a big one of those countdown timers, those live countdown timers between now and then to just to build up the anticipation. AK, are you absolutely buzzing for this?
Absolutely buzzing. Probably should run the horse on the track. They might get a few one-runner races there anyway. So it's might not even need a racecourse gallop. You can do them. You can do them on the rules.
Get a bit of money for it as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe apparently he had a private one at Worcester this season. Well, recently. So it's not even his first public gallop this season.
Desperate, isn't it? Desperate, isn't it?
New public gallops than actual runs, perhaps. We'll see how that one plays out. But yeah, at least he's on the road back to potentially running again. We might see him, but hopefully it goes well. Let's talk about the blogger as well before we do get into the racing review. We gave this a bit of airtime last week, and we had a question from Lee Chapman who says, "Let's talk about the blogger again. Does he deserve a more prominent role on our TV screens, at least on the racing channels?" And this is following like his campaign down in Australia, where he seems to be quite well received. Lee Mottersett wrote a piece in the Racing Post with just kind of detailing how he's got on well and seems to have made an impact. I think he's off to New Zealand now as well. He's doing very well. But he did, the blogger was talking to Lee Mottersett in his piece, and just in reference to how he's received at home, one of the notable quotes was, "I've always tried to be positive, but it's been tough for me back home. I feel like I've been pigeonholed as a dog left in a kennel. It's like I've been locked up with the keys thrown
one of the
away."
most mixed metaphors you'll ever.
Yeah, it's so mad, isn't it?
And times it has made me feel isolated and lonely. I've had some dark battles in British and Irish racing. Tony, come in on that then, on the whole blogger thing, and his I guess his reception up here to, there is a big contrast to how he's received in other countries, which we did mention last week.
It's basically what we said last week, isn't it? I mean, over at home, he seems to be a mixed bag with a lot of people. But just reading subsequent comments in the last 7 days or so, honestly, he seems to have gone down an absolute storm over there. Presumably, he's being paid quite handsomely for it. Obviously, those are ridiculously self-pitying comments that he said to Lee. And I think he's done pretty well over here. I mean, is he still a priced up ambassador? So he hasn't done that badly. One thing I did think about here, at home, how does he monetize himself? I mean, does he get paid all the blogs he does and all the videos? How does he actually get paid for that in some respect?
It must be advertising, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know the specifics of it. I essentially don't know when he was with Hills or whether he priced up or whoever. I'd imagine I actually don't know the answer to the question, so I'm speculating. But he'll either be getting paid salary or as an affiliate. I'd imagine it'll be one or the other, or maybe both. I don't know. That'd be my guess, but I don't know.
But
I think the thing with him, as we were saying last week, is a lot of his, I just wonder if he's falling into that trap of trying to be all things to all people. I'm not sure you can do the very low level, kicking off in a pub because Real Madrid have scored in the 92nd minute and storming out, and also doing quite good gambling content, and the two don't really sort of, I suspect that if Nick Luck started doing videos of him kicking the hell out of a fob tee in Teddington, we would probably people take him slightly less seriously as a journalist. So I just think he probably has to pick a lane, really.
I might take him that seriously, but it'd be some watch.
It would be a good watch.
Just watching Nick Luck trying to find a betting shop
I suspect he knows his way around the betting shops in Teddington. I may be wrong.
I thought I misheard you there. I thought of Nick Luck kicking the shit out of a fox, not a 40.
Oh, what, like Jolyon Morm with a base in a what was it, in a kimono and a cricket bat?
Yeah.
Who was that? Was that the
It was
lawyer?
Jolyon Morm. Do you remember that he runs the he's the
Oh
very
yeah, the
right on
good law.
barrister who runs the Good Law Project, and he did
Yeah.
that bizarre tweet about how he was wearing his wife's kimono and beat a fox to death in his garden because they were after his artisanal chickens.
Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole stuff of going bananas when a football team scores in the last minute, like there's an unbelievable market for that on the likes of TikTok and stuff.
Oh, is there?
Accounts there are accounts that have made, I'm presuming, are making a lot of money out of, or doing very well out of Man United just being absolutely rubbish for the last year. And
Yes.
not, I'm not just talking about Goldbridge here, but there's
He's
loads of guys who just film themselves going bananas when it's all going bad, and their followers have just gone up and up and up and up and up. And I assume the bloggers trying to tap into that as well. But I guess your point stands
oh
there,
well,
Harry.
no.
You can't be everything, really. You can't have two faces. I guess it's a bit a
I think it's
contrast to
very
what he's doing.
difficult. I think it's very You need to know your market and focus on it, because otherwise people don't give you the time to look at your more serious content if they don't think you're, a serious content producer. So yeah, as I say, I think I suspect that the answer for him is to pick a lane, and it sounds like he's more comfortable in the more upmarket lane.
It probably works more outside of the jurisdiction, maybe. Probably works more.
Yeah,
It can
maybe.
probably be more of a mixed bag, maybe abroad, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do. Tony, why don't you take us away with a racing review, and then we'll start with the topics then.
Yeah, just a racing review this week. It wasn't a massive week. The main story is that National Hunt Racing is still struggling badly for numbers. Sandown on Sunday was the latest example. We had the second walkover within 4 days there. And just this morning, we've had our third walkover in the space of 5 days with Kempton today. A two-runner race has gone down to a one-runner race. We've got a question on that later, so we'll deal with that then. But it's clearly a bit embarrassing for the sport to have three walkovers in such a short space of time. On the track, Fisselask won the Old Rowan at Exeter on Friday. Really progressive horse. Brilliant placing by Skelton, who's had a great few days. Not a big fan of Cheltenham Festival betting myself, but I thought Impertoire became a plausible 20-1 chance for the Stayers Hurdle when winning a Patemps qualifier of 148, albeit one that was rendered a bit lightweight because hurdles were omitted due to a low sun. We've got a question on the proliferation of Patemps qualifiers a bit later on as well, so we'll deal with that then. Colonel Harry won the Grand Sefton, and over at Wincanton, Paul Nicholls is struggling for stars this season, but he had a short price treble there. Gustavian won the Badger Beers. And on the flat, we had Castle Cove was a runaway winner of the November handicap. Danielle was ultra impressive in the listed race, winning that by 9 lengths. And I think this was the last Group 1 of the season. George Scott's Bay City Roller won the Group 1 there by 7 lengths. So a lot of wide margin wins in bad ground this weekend, while the National Hunt season are struggling for soft ground of any description. So yeah, that's like I said, we'll come back to a couple of points from the weekend, but yeah, that was a full speed racing review. That's done and dusted.
There must have been nothing on with horse racing being the 7th biggest sport on our site on Sunday. It was I've never seen it number 7 before. And again, small sample, but and probably other things be on as well. But that's going to be the case a lot of the time. It's just is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sunday, I guess, racing wise as well. Not great fields. We start our topics, lads, and we're going to start with Harry Stewart Moore writing about account freezing orders and account forfeiture orders in gambling. I'm not going to do you a disservice here, Harry, by summarising this, but potentially you could open it out for us. Here, what you've been writing here, kind of explaining what an account freezing order was, etc.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of open it out for us and let the lads come in then?
Sure. So, I mean, in simple terms, it's under the Proceeds of Crime Act, which is generally speaking uh, concerned with criminal offences. These are not criminal offences. These are civil orders that the criminal agencies like the National Crime Agency, HMRC, and all police forces can and do bring when they think that on the balance of probabilities, money is either ill-gotten or is going to be used for the commission of an offence. So it's although you go to a magistrate's court to make this application, it's not criminal. So you don't have to establish that they've committed a crime. So that's the first thing that people perhaps don't realise about it. So they can do two. Well, the first thing they can do is freeze the money in the account, and that tends to be, I think, when people hear about that, they assume that that is being done in the context of criminal investigations. And as I say, this very often is not done in the it's also done in the context of criminal investigations, but it's very often not done in the context of criminal investigations. So the police can make an application to court. They are entitled in circumstances to make that application without what's called without notice, so they don't tell the person whose bank account it is, and they turn up at court and they say they have to give some evidence or some explanation as to why they want to freeze it. Magistrates' courts are known to be very quick, or quite quick, to give these interim freezing orders to freeze the money, and they'll often do it for 3-6 months, but they can do it for up to 2 years. Once that has been done, the police are entitled then to issue what's called a forfeiture notice, which basically says unless you object to us taking it in the next 30 days, we are taking it for the benefit of the state. It's gone. If you do object, then there's a contested hearing on the balance of probabilities as to whether this money essentially is either the proceeds of crime or is going to be used for the commission of a crime. And the reason I decided to, we decided to put out an article on that was that we're just seeing an awful lot more of these. I don't see them in any other context because I'm not a criminal lawyer. I only deal with criminal law really when it comes to the areas that I practice in, including gambling. And having not really seen any of them, over about the last, I would say, 12 to 18 months, we are both being instructed in connection with them and hearing anecdotally about a lot more of them. And the difficulty you face, and now sometimes obviously there are definitely causes for concern for the police, and you can see why they are doing what they're doing. But the real difficulty you always face when the police or any agency gets involved in gambling is understanding what on earth they're looking at when they look at these bank. And it's usually, in my experience, although you never quite know who has reported it, I think it's banks that report it. I don't think bookmakers report this stuff when they don't, because I think they understand more about what's going on and they don't sort of panic and go, well, why are there so many bets on this account? And I think what's, I suppose, troubling is that the arguments that you see raised, particularly at the first without noticed hearing, can be really quite basic. And, along the lines, as I say in the article, of this chap's made several £1,000s through his gambling activities. That in itself is suspicious because everyone knows that you can't beat bookmakers. And those arguments do get more traction in courts where people think that that's just sort of that old housewives tale is a truism. And then it's quite difficult to explain, particularly if you're engaged. Some of these people are engaged in things that bookmakers wouldn't like, match betting, for example. But it's not a criminal offence. There are, companies that advertise all the tools for it, how to do match betting, as we all know. And yes, everyone gets shut down very quickly doing it. But police forces look at that and just go, what on earth is happening here? You wouldn't be doing turnover like that if you wanted up to something. And the real thing is that this can go on and on and on. This can take a very long time, and can take it can take several years to get your money out. And of course, if you are using, and it's actually quite a good reason, I would suggest to people who are not, obviously people who are not doing anything wrong, that you keep your betting stuff in a separate account, because they can freeze your personal account if that's your betting. account. Yes, you're supposed to, that you can make applications and carve outs for living expenses and that sort of thing. But I got a call from some guy way back. Literally, at the moment I can't get home because I've come to court on my own, not really understanding what was going on. And my cards don't, my cards aren't going to work. I'm not quite sure if it hit that quickly, but he was saying I literally don't know how I'm going to get home. So it's pretty hairy stuff if you're on the wrong end of these things. And I just thought my suspicion is a lot more people are being affected by it. And I think what's slightly unpleasant about them is that you start to think, well, have I done something wrong here? And you start to sort of double question yourself about, whether what you've been doing is a criminal offence or it's just a very unpleasant situation to be in. And as I say, it can be quite difficult to explain your way out of it simply because you're dealing with people who haven't the first clue.
Well, tell me that this sounds mad to me. All this stuff, because what's the threshold of it popping up in magistrates' court? My understanding of magistrates' courts are magistrates are bloody school governors, and they bloody hand out 60 quid fines for you not paying your TV license. Like,
well, that's maybe your personal experience with them again, but
you don't answer the door, Harry.
They can they send people to prison. I don't think it possibly should go in front of magistrates. It's a civil application and perhaps does belong in civil courts. But it's statute. That's what we've got. It's very, very powerful. It's on the edges of what, in my view, liberal democracies really ought to be allowing law enforcement agencies to do. Really on the edges for me, because I think it is very it's a very blunt instrument, and the fact that they can just turn up at a court without notice because they can say, oh well, if we tell them, they'll just transfer the money off, and the court, oh yeah, no, good point, and they don't always, as I said in the article, some police forces are really decent. They'll write to them and go, look, we've had this report. In the first instance, could you just give us some information about what you're doing? And those police forces tend to be very reasonable. You say, well, look, this is my you have to explain your betting basically to them and why you bet like that, why there are these sums moving in and out of your bank account or between bank accounts, for example. And yeah, it's hairy stuff.
Is that the trigger, moving money from accounts?
You don't really know what the trigger is. You other than, of course, you do get the police's arguments as to what, or whoever it is that's brought the application. You do get the arguments as to why, but as I say, it can be anything from stuff that really does look, even to us, it would look, yeah, no, look, there's something funny going on here, to someone, as I say, who is involved in high turnover betting strategies, for example, and they just go, why are there so many? Bonus abuse would be a really good example of it. People who just keep putting in, there are probably a lot of bookmakers going, good, I hope they go to prison, but it's not a criminal offence, to be signing up to bonuses left, right, and centre, but yeah, we've had ones where we've had to explain that that's what someone is doing. In order to quieten things down, basically, because all they're doing is trying to make the most of bonuses and then moving on. And as I say, it's very irritating and people don't like it. But it's not. It shouldn't be the basis of funds being frozen in accounts for months on end.
I just find it's kind of like, even when I was gambling, it was kind of bank stuff, man.
It's bank. I think banks.
When you're growing up and you have these visions of people in authority being competent, I suppose. You have this like a naive view of it, and then you go into banks and you talk to bank managers and stuff like that, and they're nothing special. Like it's just people not understanding. And
I'm afraid it all comes back to regulation again. It's and compliance. Regulation has caused a very serious problem for a lot of industries, but the monster of compliance, which gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And yes, criminals get more sophisticated, so sort of it needs to. But these banks are just living in fear of getting into trouble for not spotting.
That's what it is. Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah, and it's the same. You see it probably in in the bookmaking industry as well. You see
Yeah.
it in every industry. It's an overzealous approach to everything because to avoid downside essentially.
Is it becoming worryingly wide scale, this, Harry?
Well, listen, obviously it's anecdotal. I wouldn't know. I can't go so far as to say it's becoming worryingly wide scale, but I'm seeing enough of it, and it's more the arguments that you see put forward that really sort of are the cause for concern. As I say, some of them are just extraordinary as to why they think there are grounds for suspicion. Um, and it can take a very long time. The police quite often ask you in for a police interview in order to explain it. Now, it's not a criminal offence, but you're being asked to. It's not a criminal investigation usually, but you're being asked to turn up and give a recorded interview with the police. It's not very pleasant.
It is. What a world.
Yeah.
Bizarre. Let's move it on. That's to topic number 2, which has been titled "A Couple of Strange Racing Post Articles." So we can bring them in now. But we have a question on this from Swad, account name Swad. Do you think a conscious decision was made at Racing Post Terrace for employees to start being a bit more edgy in an attempt to raise engagement, regardless or not of the fact what is said or written is often complete toilet? So with a couple of articles that were mentioned here during the week, as David Jennings was writing about, racing country has become far too nice. We all need to be more like Ted Walsh and say it like it is. I think in response to a little piece that Ted Walsh did, I think at Fairy House earlier in the week, where he was referring to his own horse as something so and so as he does, and I can't remember what the actual adjective was. But there was also a
Larry.
piece with Chris
Larry?
Larry so and so. Yeah, that was it. There's also a piece with Chris Cook on betting shops, and there was a tweet from Maddie Plale, that garnered quite a lot of traction on X as well. I might come in on that after a bit, but Tony, do you want to come in and have first innings here, just on the general Racing Post coverage over the last week, and in particular these stories that you mentioned here?
Yeah, we'll start off with David Jennings' comment piece, which signed off with this comment: "Everything is too nice at the moment, and nice gets you nowhere," which is a strange thing to say about horse racing media, because the nicer you are, the more gigs you tend to get, and racing TV is quite cliquey, and they're all friends together. They all go to dinner together and stuff like that. So I think that is just a ridiculous thing to say.
No, just to defend that DJ there, Tony, isn't that what he's saying? He's saying in general that everything's too nice and getting ours, and that's we need as a whole industry. We need to have more Ted Walshisms and
Yeah,
kind of
but
take each other on a bit. Is that
yeah,
as
but
opposed to
David has written for the Racing Post, the trade paper, for a number of years. So for him to be saying that now, and Racing Post are not known for taking on the big subjects week in, week out, are they? So there are some things that don't go anywhere near. I mean, for advertising reasons, etc., etc. But no, I'm just like David did get in touch with me last night. Actually, he said I'll be interested to know your take on it. But yeah, it's like I said, it's pretty of a slow news week. But his preface that if you're a bit more edgier and nastier, you'll get more traction and more gigs in horse racing. I think that's quite fanciful. The less offensive you are, the more likely you are to be. I can give you any number of examples of people, but I'm not going to single anybody out who have got their job by not rocking the boat. But that was that. That was that. Look, it was just a comment piece. But his overall point is correct that you should get more people talking, expressing their opinions and talking their minds a bit more openly. But if you do that, we know in horse racing you are not going to get the interview the following week if you go to town on somebody or even mildly criticise them, because it's a very touchy business. The Chris Cook article I reread it again this morning, and I'm coming round to being a bit more kind of thought it was a decent piece. I recently read it and I thought this had shades of, I don't know if you remember, Alistair Down did about 10 years ago, did a pro Fobty piece where he went around betting shops and saying how great FOBTs were, etc. So I thought it was a bit of a sop to betting shops in the current climate. But I reread it again this morning, and there was some decent stuff in there.
I thought it was a good article. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot better than on first reading. Some interesting news lines there. We were talking about shop numbers in recent weeks, and he's got the official figures: 5,931, down from over 9,000 in 2004, over 9,000 in 2014. So that gives you some idea of the decline. And it basically, it was a feature about saying about the importance of betting shops in the community. Now, I don't buy that at all, but it was
Yeah,
obviously
I'm the same, to be
positioned.
honest with you.
But I thought it was positioned in a way that, betting shops have still got a vital role in the community and socially. But it was kind of like it was kind of like kneecapped by the fact they had four pictures in the accompanying article. One had four people in them, one had three people in them, one had two people in them, and the other one had one person in them. And it was all this idea of bookmaking, betting shops being still a community hub with a view to Rachel Reeves on November the
Yeah.
26th. I just thought it was a bit, like I said, it was a bit of I wouldn't say an advertorial for betting shops, but it didn't ring true at all. But
I
the
mean,
wide
I
vision,
think certainly at the top of our road on the Uxbridge Road, we've got there are three Irish guys over the age of, I would say, 75 who meet pretty much every day with their, God knows where
Yeah.
they get it from, but their copy of the Irish Sun, and they sit there and they just chat, in front of the screens, and they have a few bets. So I think it does still play that part, but just for a very small
It's dwindling,
number of
isn't it?
people.
That's what I was.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I was going to say the same regarding Jennings's piece. I do get what he's trying to say. I agree with both of you actually. I think the nicer you are, the more gigs you get, but you probably don't get the traction. So yeah, then I suppose the nastier you are, or the more controversial you are, you get more traction. I think, but you don't get the gigs. I think there's probably some kind of balance, and I think to be honest with you, I think Ted Walsh actually is the perfect balance from everything I ever see when Ted Walsh does anything. Like he says something, says the odd thing where you go, well, it's probably slightly over the line or whatever. But Ted Walsh is like unbelievable value for me. Like if you had a few Ted Walshes, I think he'd be the sport be in a better place. He's unbelievable value, and it's not for the sake of saying stuff. There's always a bit of meaning behind it, whether you 100% agree with the delivery or not. I always think he's unbelievable value. I'm the same with you, Harry, on the betting shop thing. I think betting shops will continue to dwindle. It wouldn't surprise me if there's 2,500, 3,000 betting shops in 18 months, 24 months time. I can understand why the racing post want to defend them. It's probably similar to horse racing. It's probably quite an important revenue source for the racing post. So
Definitely is, yeah.
They're always going to be pro betting shop. I agree with Harry that I don't think betting shops as a whole are just saying this is like an unbelievable social hub for people. It is for a select few people, and the demographic that Harry mentioned would be top of that pile, your 70 to 80-year-old fellas who are going in there and meeting up with the pals and having a couple of us. I don't think you can underestimate how vital that is, but that's essentially as good as all it is. Like there's an unbelievable amount of betting shops that I go in, and I just think they're pretty grim. I just think the whole experience in them is pretty grim. Disinterested staff, fairly sterile environments now. I was in London last week for a few days, and I ended up in a Ladbrokes in Holborn. I think it was between Holborn.
I know that Ladbrokes
and Covent Garden.
yeah.
It is grim.
Yeah.
Smell of weed walking in. Like
That's one of the highlights.
Yeah, it was.
And that was only the BHA staff around the
corner. I thought it was pretty. That Ladbrokes in particular was the wouldn't have been. You'd imagine the shop.
There's a better one right behind in a little alleyway right behind Holborn Station. If you're ever in that area again, yeah, it's less great.
I bow to your superior knowledge.
Under Mishkondarea, ironically, yeah.
But that one on that high street was absolutely shocking, I thought. But then again, there was probably 10 fellas in there. A couple of them on, I don't know if they were on FOBTs, they might have been on SSBT terminals, and there was a few people that seemed to be betting on racing. even though I found the experience fairly grim and not much happening.
Their alternative, though, is the office, I suppose. So perhaps less grim.
Yeah,
They're only probably
I'm not
going
even sure there would have been many people going into offices. So
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. No, sometimes you do get quite a lot of guys jumping out of work to go into them.
Fair enough.
Around
And then
that
on the Maddie tweet, like, I'm definitely not going to. Speaking from experience, I'm not going to be encouraging anyone to pile on anyone on social media now. But and it's just not the way that I do it anyway. But I take it with a pinch of salt. Like I think Maddie does tweet a lot of stuff that I just think they're just non-issues, and it's fairly pointless and stuff. But I don't agree with the pylons, and I'm more like, my own personal view is, if I don't agree with someone, generally I'm not going out of my way to tell them I don't agree with them. I suppose I'm just kind of just not consuming their stuff. So
Yeah.
Just on that, I mean, I see people defending. So obviously, if people haven't seen this, so this is Maddie's tweet. She's quote tweeted a video of Impoz Trois winning the Aintree impressively. Was one going away basically, and it's just asked, did he really need three smacks at the whip? Referring to the ride. And obviously, people have jumped on this quite a lot. And people jumping in then defending Maddie, like Bruce Millington, and just the first tweet you see there, the reaction to this perfectly justifiable question shows why most pundits aren't in a rush to be more like Ted Walsh. So I don't know. I take issue with that kind of reaction as such. I mean, I think if you tweet something like this, did he really need three smacks to whip, and then try and brandish or try and say it's a kind of journalistic question just to get debate on both sides? I think there's a strong inference here that if you tweet that, you're of the opinion that he didn't need three smacks to whip, and you're raising that whip issue, and it's always going to
100%.
cause huge amount of debate. It's been tailors all the time now, the whip debate, and people are going to come in hardly there. And if you want to be like Ted Walsh and do that, fair enough, but you're going to have to take the heat that comes with that. And everybody knows that the whip debate is obviously a very heated debate.
Bruce is always like he plays the fatherly role in that situation. I always think like, yeah, he's always, if I was Maddie, and I don't know her obviously, I always think Bruce is like the perfect protector there, because he always jumps in and defends, and that's probably what you want of a boss or an ex-boss. But yeah, I think that's always gonna. It's the tweet is sent in the.
I just think it's such a bizarre thing. I mean, did he have to hit him 3 times? Did he have to make him jump over that fence? I mean, the whole thing is just an absolutely bizarre. Why do we draw the line at this bit of foam in the jockey's hand? An awful lot of particularly national hunt racing has welfare issues attached to it. It's just, for me, it's bizarre. So did he really need to hit him 3 times? I mean, which is more dangerous, jumping over the fence or being hit 3 times by a bit of foam? It's just, there is no logic to this.
It's basically the perception thing. But I watched that race and he literally gave it 3 flicks of the whip. I mean, we did a piece last October when Harry Skelton was literally about 15 lengths clear, and he was still giving it 2 or 3 big cracks quite close to the line, and he ended up getting
that was slightly different
days for it. I mean, there's no way in the world. I mean, that is comparable. I mean, she knew exactly what she was. She clearly thought that horse shouldn't have been flicked 3 times with the whip. I mean, that's fair enough, but if you say that, then you know what you're going to get in response, don't you? I mean, you know what kind of like question is going to be unfurled there. But
I do think she should be able to say what she said without getting piled on though as well, or people be like, that is way too common.
Well, it's about the tone, isn't it? Because I think you can expect people, 50 people
disagree.
to say I don't agree,
but
said,
but it's the people that
the tone is
just
unacceptable.
Just coming to the wider point about
people
coming back to the wider point about people making criticism, to sort of wrap this bit up. I mean, you do get people, the people who criticise do so from a position of power, i.e. that even if you sack me for this, I'm still going to say it. Ted Walsh is a trainer, presumably a very rich man in his own right.
That's what it is.
You've got Ruby Walsh, who basically is alone in just like calling out on a regular basis jockeys and rides, etc., in his analysis hub, etc. I mean, they can do it without fear of being hauled in or being, blacklisted by other people in the training and jockey ranks. So if you have a position of power where even if you get sacked, you don't care because you're a rich person in your own right, it does give you a good platform to do that. I mean, if you're a working journalist working with trainers and jockeys and owners week in, week out, you're just not going to do it. And as much as I find it frustrating, that is the reality.
Yeah, it's a power thing. I do agree with that. It's two ends of the spectrum, I always think, as well. Like, you get the guys that have got nothing to lose, so they can say what they want. And then you've got the guys at the other end of the spectrum who've got nothing, so they can say what they want as well. Like, it's kind of the guy, like, there's two ends of the spectrum for over zealous and critical thinking. If you've got nothing to lose and if you've actually got nothing. So it's, yeah.
So Johnny Deneen would be another example, wouldn't he?
Doesn't need the money, doesn't need, he'll be fine on his own. He can essentially, he's got more free reign. I think you do see, it's different, like, isn't it? The Racing Post is essentially a very big affiliate. And like, I think as Swad might have mentioned in his question or some of his tweets, he was saying around, are they just being controversial for controversy's sake? I think there is a little bit of that, because at the end of the name of the game is engagement, and that they need that engagement essentially, and then that probably exacerbates some of the situations. I always think, again, I'd never pile on the fella, but Rodway, Graham Rod, like, I just, there's never anything he says that I'm just like, oh, that's smart or whatever. It's just for I just always think he just can't think that stuff like that. It can't be possible that that's his opinion. It has to be shaped towards engagement. It just has to be. But maybe it is. But maybe it works for them. Maybe he's on the shows because he derives engagement, and that's kind of the freaking world we live in, isn't it?
I think this thing of engagement is really terrifying, and it means that, I mean, on LinkedIn is absolutely horrific for it, of people just spouting off every day just because they want to make sure that they're in people's feeds, and it's just banal nonsense that's been written by AI.
Like it, that post TikTok and Instagram, just constantly posting, narrating their own boring lives. Like, it's, I think we've probably all been guilty of it as well, at certain things. I'm just switching off more and more, I think, just from the loop, essentially, and just consuming what I want to consume, I think.
We'll move it on, gents. Just do a couple of stories that we can't really comment on, but I'll just read them out, and potentially we can come back to them in later podcasts if they develop as such. But just touch on the Robert Winston news this week out in Bahrain. So jockey Robert Winston has had his license revoked in Bahrain after losing his job with trainer Paul Smith just 2 days after riding two winners on the opening day of the season. The 45-year-old was returning to race riding for the first time since 2022. Saw his contract and work visa cancelled, which automatically invalidated his racing license. So they had a spokesperson for the Bahrain Turf Club saying, so following an incident involving Mr. Robert Winston, his license was suspended by the Bahrain Turf Club, and it is subject to an ongoing investigation. So in turn, after that, the Rashid Equestrian Horse Racing Club said Robert Winston came here and wanted the license from the RHC. We did our due diligence with the BHE and IHRB, and neither had any objection to him having a license. We have local riders and people who come in and are residents for the season. They stay on a contract. He came on a contract, and his contract was cancelled last week, and with it, his work visa. Therefore, he can no longer hold an REHC license. So, it was asked by the Racing Post as to why the contract was cancelled, and the response there was, you need to discuss this with the employer. So not sure what exactly has gone on there, but I believe Robert Winston is back in the UK now, so we'll see what happens And then over on this side of the Irish Sea, we have complex case, or a kind of development in the case with Luke Comer. So former trainer Jim Gorman has claimed in court. This is Mark Costello writing in the Irish Field. Former trainer Jim Gorman has claimed in court that he was offered a bribe by Luke Comer to, in inverted commas, take the rap for the positive drug tests returned by Comer-owned horses in late 2021, which ultimately led to Comer losing his trainer's license for 3 years. So just if you recall here, I think it was 12 horses altogether that were tested positive for anabolic steroids. Luke Comer was the named trainer. So Gorman was Comer's trainer, trained down in Kilturn in County Dublin for 6 years. And he's made the claim in a complex case in which he's seeking an order against Comer to expand on a claim Comer allegedly made to the effect that Gorman had accepted a substantial amount of money from Coolmore Stud to administer drugs to Comer's horses. In his court statement, Gorman claims that lawyers for Coolmore Stud wrote a letter rejecting in the strongest possible terms allegations that they made cash payments to Gorman or had any involvement in a supposed plot to administer prohibited substances to Comer's horses. If Comer or his solicitors identify the person who allegedly made that claim, Gorman is seeking to sue that individual for what he says is serious defamation by false claims that he received money and administered banned substances. So again, not one we can really comment on there, lads, but we'll see how it develops in the next few weeks, I guess. And then we'll move on to our weekly Kia klaxon. So, Tony, do you want to take it away? He's been at it again over in the US and splashing yet more cash, this time kind of on the breeding side.
Yeah, he's spent 6.2 million buying. Let me just get it there. He's purchased Streak of Luck, the dam of undefeated Breeders' Cup juvenile winner Ted Noffey, sale topper at the Faisy Tipton November sales. So
fucking hell.
It's another 6. It's basically he's just trying to get his breeding operation up and running. But I mean, we're talking years there. We're not talking immediate like some of his kind of like
Better use of investment maybe than splashing the cash on the big yearlings, I suppose, which we kind of said before could be anything really,
Yeah.
but at least there's something proven here, I suppose.
Yeah, there's obviously there's some residual value in buying kind of like mares and etc. But again, it's big money, isn't it?
It's
But
10.25% of 6.2 million.
yeah,
650 grand.
the reason why I put it in there because I know you mentioned something about a good interview Kia did on the Nick Luck Daily podcast, Harry. About
we get some stick for giving Keir some stick sometimes on here, but I listened to a relatively lengthy interview with him on Nick Luck the other day, and I thought he came across really well. And his enthusiasm was really to the fore, which it wasn't one of these interviews where you felt that he was there to sort of, he had a reason to be there or he was making a point. And he came across really well, I thought. And he talked about Frankie Dettori, and it made much more sense when you listen to him talking about what the plans are. He's obviously a massive fanboy of Frankie Dettori, and what's wrong with that? And he's got the money. And he was talking about how it's a very long-term project. And yeah, I mean, it's a funny one because it's hard to know whether to view it as just a massive hobby for a very rich man or a business. And I suppose that's where it sometimes gets a bit confusing. And, I think perhaps it's a bit of both, but when you listen to that interview, you get the sense actually it's much more about he just loves it. And that's always much more appealing. So, yeah, I thought it was a very good interview, very interesting, and he came across well.
Yeah, he's obviously trying to do it as a business and a longer term business with us. I think our questions have been whether that's going to be achievable.
Yeah,
that's always been our thing, and I think he's probably doing a bit of it with other people's money as well, which probably makes sense to mitigate some of that risk or two.
The one thing he said was that he implied that he wouldn't be giving interviews anymore, and it would all Frankie Dettori would be being the face of Ammo. So that'll be interesting.
I'll take the always on that for my man.
And then to people who are, we often, as you say, Harry, get comments on the videos going, oh, why are you talking about Kia again and again? And I don't know, he's quite an interesting guy, and obviously he's splashing
Yeah,
so much cash. It's interesting to talk about. And yes, of course, definitely take the positive. People make the point, oh, he's contributing to racing. He's obviously employing a lot of people. Of course he is, but it's just interesting that he's spending so much money, and the way he behaves and with jockeys in his tenure so far. It's
yeah.
just interesting to talk about, I guess.
I,
None of us we're criticizing him when we do in the context of someone who is you certainly wouldn't want him to go anywhere in a hurry. No one's saying they want him out of racing. He's a unique and important character. And yeah, sometimes we criticize him, but as I say, I think he came across really well on that interview the other day.
There you go. We move on, lads. So, podcast favorite Anne Duffield has announced she's retiring from training at the end of the year after sending out more than 500 winners in a career stretching all the way back to 1992. Tony, do you want to come in there?
I thought you were going to say 1945 then.
yeah, it's just obviously Patrick Weaver, who's a fellow lunatic on Twitter. He actually said she's given up racing to become a politician. So, but if you're familiar with
Well, why not nowadays?
subject and time, yeah, exactly.
Never a more opportune time. It's
No.
All UK candidate all over. Yeah, she's given up. Some guy is going to be taking over on
It's her
January.
son.
Hanlon.
Is it her son, isn't it?
Is it her son? Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Okay. So he's taking over on January the 1st. So yeah, I mean,
But she should be congratulated on a long, sticking at it that long. It's not an easy game.
Yeah, her husband George Duffield, I think he's nearing 80 as well, and he would probably have been an integral part of that. But
Yes.
he's obviously kicking on a bit now. But yeah, yeah. So it's colourful character, colourful Twitter feed. If you want to go and have a look, and although I assume some of that stuff has been deleted by now.
Who knows? I can't say I'm a regular
Their
visitor.
son. It says the guy's named here is Stephen Hanlon, who's taking over.
I thought I'd read that it was just
I
perhaps.
didn't think
I'm
it was
sorry.
the son either.
It may be fake news. Sorry, I thought I'd read it. It was the Sun.
Probably the BBC did that or something.
Yeah, Stephen Hanlon. He previously worked with Willie Mullins. He
I don't
looks
know.
Irish.
Okay, ignore me. I
Sounds
don't know where I
Irish.
picked that up.
He looks Irish and he sounds Irish. So I think previous work was Willie Mullins and then Rafe Beckett. So
Yeah, well,
only
maybe it's a
31.
long lost son.
So good luck to him, I guess.
Ignore us
The
all that.
DraftKings prediction markets in the US, AK. I'll let you take this away, and I guess it's out of our jurisdiction as such. But why is this significant?
Again, I'd say it's not anywhere near my area of competence, to be honest with you. Prediction markets are kind of, whenever I've investigated them and had a look at them, I've always thought they were fairly benign, and they obviously get a lot of traction. They're probably contributing to the slight recent declines in DraftKings and FanDuel's share prices, and are one of the contributing factors to that. I essentially don't know much about them, so I can't really. There'd be far better people to speak on the topic of prediction markets than me. Whenever I've looked at any of the sites, they obviously get a lot of press, and I just see the press as a layman essentially. Whenever I look at the Cowshees and the Poly markets and sites of this nature, and I haven't even looked recently, but I always find them to be quite light on content. They tend to, whenever I've looked, there's a couple of markets with very, very deep liquidity, and then a lot of markets with no liquidity. Are they a threat longer term? They're obviously getting a lot of traction. They've been talked about in updates for legalized sports books in the States quite frequently. So there's obviously that. They're obviously they're probably here to stay and going to eat some of the pie. I don't know enough about it essentially, but I also at present with my current knowledge, I don't know how. I don't see them as a monumental threat, I suppose. Just based on the lack of content, what I've seen. But again, my opinion's probably slightly out of date as well. So Yeah, don't really have much opinion. I think DraftKings. Sorry, just regarding this story, I think have DraftKings partnered with somebody recently. Again, I don't know much about it, to be honest with you. I really don't know much about it. I know Penn, is it Penn, ESPN, and the Barstool chap have parted ways, and now DraftKings are with.
Things are with ESPN. I think
Yeah,
have
yeah,
the
but
news.
I'm not sure. My understanding is that's not linked to the calcium and the poly markets and this kind of thing. So again, it's just not my area of expertise, to be honest with you. Don't really know much about it, and whenever I look at an American sports book, a FanDuel or a DraftKings or a Fanatics, I think they've got an unbelievable amount of depth and an unbelievable amount of features that far. It shows you where the money is really. I think they far surpass UK facing sports books who are under a lot more pressure. I'm always quite impressed by the product that I see. It's just probably different times. It's probably where the money is, and it's probably where the resources are going rather than the UK, as we probably all know.
Indeed. Before we get on to questions, just give it a mention that Saturday's Paddy Power Gold Cup is going to be run in memory of Edward O'Grady, who died in July at the age of 75, just in recognition for the success he had in this race and at Cheltenham, of course. He won the race, this Paddy Power Gold Cup in 2009 with Tranquil Sea, and a fair feat at the time as well. I know he's obviously had Cheltenham Festival winners, but not many Irish runners even run in the Paddy Power Gold Cup. So to win it at 2009, I remember it was a fair feat in itself. And a great race as well, the Paddy Power Gold Cup this Saturday. I always look forward to it. And Tony, I'm sure you'll be getting stuck into it in the next few days. Does the Paddy Power Gold Cup, does that high on your list of National Hunt races to take on during the season?
No.
Yeah, we've a pitch at Cheltenham, and we're not even going. I don't think so. It's just leaving it for the festival. So
One thing I did have an early look at the Cheltenham forecast. It's going to be horrendous all week, so you might get heavy ground there. So you might get a few runners, but yeah, it's normally a good race, but wouldn't be one that gets me pumping.
they don't really get much crowd,
What
really.
races do get you pumped?
Was it sorry?
I was,
Okay.
but sorry, Draw. I was just going to say from my understanding, the Friday and the Sunday are pretty quiet on the track, and the Saturday's an okay crowd. So I think you get more purists there, do you, for that kind of meeting? But we're not going. Like, I know a lot of the Irish bookies, given the cost, I suppose, of travel, accommodation, what they charge bookmakers in England to get in. A lot the guys with pitches at Cheltenham tend to go to Navan instead on that weekend. So I'm not sure how popular it is just in general. You guys would know more about it. But
It's one of the big. It's one of the big televised Sundays, the Great Wood Hurdle. We don't get many big Sundays in this country for reasons that just hasn't caught on over here. You get 1,000 guineas on a Sunday, and this is probably maybe the second biggest, but I don't know about crowd numbers.
I always thought it was after the festival, the open meeting. The open meeting, I think they brand it as was the one of the more popular, probably the next most popular Cheltenham meeting. I don't know.
I suppose it might have some. Well, the crowd will be dictated increasingly now by these invades days. There was some talk about Aintree on Saturday being unbearable because the number of kind of like youngsters there all kicking up, a lot of noise, etc. But I did speak to somebody who was there and said it wasn't quite unbearable. It wasn't great, but yeah, it's like if students they're getting 6,000 students in there on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, it's the crowds are going to be inflated, aren't they?
And on that topic, we can kick off our questions, or the topic of field sizes anyway. So, a question from Andre Jordan: given the current dry conditions at quite a few jumping tracks, should these meetings get called off? Given they are generally attracting extremely small fields, it's just probably calling them off might be a step too far. But I guess when you have if you phrase it in a way, if you're going to Sandown yesterday or going even to Kempton today, where there's another abandoned race as such, you probably feel a bit miffed that you're not getting bang for your buck.
Yeah, there was
Go on.
Sandown yesterday. Apparently, it was 35 quid to get in on the door, which is, so you're probably paying a pound a runner. I think there were literally about 35 runners,
Bloody hell.
which is just 35 quid to get on the door there. I mean, it's madness.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can't really defend that. Ed Johnson, what do you make of the word safe, which appears to be the way for national hunt trainers to describe concerns about ground these days? Recall a time not long ago when it was deemed reckless language, but now many use it as standard lingo for withdrawing horses. Harry, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, it is quite often used cynically in order to make yourself Teflon from any criticism for removing a horse from a race.
And also, it's kind of like coded language from trainers to get courses to water. You have a situation where Paul Nicholls in his Betfair column on Friday used that term, my horse will run as long as it's safe ground. I actually wrote an article, a piece within a piece on Friday about that kind of language. It's incredibly unhelpful because
I think so.
Well, it implies that racing takes place on unsafe ground.
yes, and what message does that send to people, the
Yeah.
owners and trainers who are running their horses on ground they deem
Objectively
unsafe?
unsafe. Yeah,
It,
it's
it's
ridiculous.
it's it's incredibly kind of like unhelpful language. But, we get
It's
horses.
amazing how these phrases just catch on, though, isn't it? It's probably, too often. I expect very often it's just that's the lingo of the day rather than that there's any particular
We know what they mean. We know what
method.
they mean. They do young horses, especially chasers. They don't want to be running them on anything with firm or good to firm anywhere in the description. But to say that's safe is just so counterproductive.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
not.
true.
It's not. The whole sport is in such a state of confusion over how its approach to welfare is to be untrue.
Indeed. Ian Mackey, given a situation at Middlesbrough this week that unfolded, do the panel think that loyalty in sport as a whole means absolutely nothing these days, with all the platitudes spoken by the participants, meaning the disconnect between them and the fans is never wider than it is now? So I think this was due to Middlesbrough manager Rob Edwards is looking like he's going to take the Wolves job, and then was stood down from by Middlesbrough on Saturday.
Yeah.
When he
What
got
is it?
vacated.
What does Roy Keane say? If you want loyalty, get a dog. I'd be kind of the same. It's I just think cash is king, and I just follow incentives to. If you work out in life where people are what people are incentivized to do, that tends to be what they do. And yeah, I don't know. Is loyalty dead? I think in certain respects it works both ways. Even just make it better staff and um, retaining staff and keeping the staff you want, essentially. Like there's a bit of loyalty, but it works both.
How loyal is Ronan?
How loyal is Ronan? That's
Yeah,
Ronan.
on
He's
out of
after that
10.
HRI job. We were aware of that,
Still here, Harry.
but Brian Kavanagh
I'm,
better
blo-
watch himself.
He looks to me like he's lacing up his trainers every time I see him.
I'm
Yeah.
bloody still here. That's the problem.
Loyalty. You need other job offers for loyalty. But no, yeah, I don't know. I just think it works both ways, doesn't it? I always think just in general, it's without being too fucking weird about it. Like it's. I think the older you get, and the older I've got, doing stuff that you enjoy and being around people that you enjoy and is probably more important than. Yeah, I think in life I think when you have kids, I've found like career aspirations just kind of melt a bit into the pot, and it becomes a little bit not like survival, but it becomes a little bit like just doing stuff you enjoy as time progresses, and that's what uh, I think that's what people probably should do more than anything else. But yeah, loyalty. If you like what you're doing, I always try and stay around for stuff I like doing. Basically, don't know how to answer it. A bit of a weird answer.
Loyalty in sports are quite a weird concept generally, isn't it? When you see people.
But that's it. Like, it works both ways, doesn't it? Like it's like you can be loyal, but like if it doesn't take much for even in work life, any industry, your boss to change and fucking you're out on your door. Like I would have seen it in
If you're a
Paddy Power,
footballer,
when people
you
were
don't
loyal
want
for
them
20 years and just get binned off, and just in an instant after some internal change, like it's you see it all the time. Like it's loyalty up to a point, but conditions change, and I don't know. It's yeah,
If
don't
you're
know.
getting £7 million payoffs after over a month being a football manager, you want people to be disloyal, don't you? On a regular basis.
Is that what he got? Is it? I don't know the story.
Didn't that Ange Postecoglou get? He was there 39 days, but didn't he get a £7 million payoff or something like that?
That was one of Kia's.
They're going to be paying about 4 managers for the next 10 years as they carry on.
That was one of Kia's mates. He's clutch. Can do what he likes.
He's in a bit of trouble. Well, I read a report. He's got a court case coming up.
The Greek fella.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like a very rational chap. All right.
He was the one that walked onto the pitch. I can't remember which manager it was, and gave him a ticking off in front of all the fans, at the end of the game. Who was that? Was that Ange?
I think it might have been actually. Yeah.
He definitely wouldn't have been running onto the pitch anyway. He's a big old unit.
He was stomping around after him. I think he's the one.
A few worms coming out of the grass as he was running onto the pitch.
No, it wasn't. It was Esprit. What's he called? The
Nuno.
Nuno. Yeah, it was Nuno. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's enough.
They were very lucky.
Sorry, Tony, too much football for you.
No, I was just going to say, Forest, they were probably quite lucky. The turnover of players they had when they had, was it Steve Cooper who got them up, or whatever the man was called, Cooper? If they wouldn't have gone up that year, it's probably the same as Villa in the Championship. If they wouldn't have gone up that year, financially it would have been interesting because they were probably spending plenty, and I don't know.
That's always one of the most interesting things about loyalty in sport, is when a team is promoted from the Championship to the Premier League, and then the manager gets 5 games in the Premier League before they're fired, and all the players that got you up into the Premier League are immediately sold in order to improve.
Ranieri is a big example of that, getting sacked the next year, like halfway through.
That
was incredible. I think was it Nigel Adkins at Southampton who got Southampton up a couple of divisions up to the Prem and then got let go.
Yeah,
that happens regular on the reg.
This is called the racing room, not the boot room.
Yes.
Move on.
Sorry, Tony. Sorry. No, you agree not to talk about rugby. We should agree not to talk about football.
Yes.
Let's go back to being critical about racing again. When David Brown is asking, when Dan Skelton's Chepstow novices are ridden like they're in a schooling yard and stewards stay silent, are we still pretending this is a competitive sport or just a private prep gallop in public, Tony?
Can I just jump in there with a disclaimer and say we're not approving the allegation in the question?
Yeah, it's obviously it's fair to say, anecdotally, I thought, when the money's down, there's not.
Tony, don't undo my disclaimer. I'm gonna have to do another disclaimer.
All right. I did ask somebody who basically bets on every single race and tracks all the betting moves, and he gave me this answer. So I'll just read on what he said. I asked him, are they a very good operation when the money's down? And I know if that negates your disclaimer, I apologise. But he said this was a reasonable answer. We can edit this out. I mean, if we get it all wrong, but he actually said, "I'm not a stats man, so it's all my own feel for these things. But yes, if they have a novice hurdler or a handicapped dead at around 5-1 on a tissue, and it goes off double figures, and more in my experience, they are more reliable drifters than any other yard. So I imagine that might get edited out. But
I think that's just if that's a statistical fact, that I think that sounds fair enough.
No, it's just that will be my experience of them as well. But I don't bet.
You bet a horse of those that drifted like a barge, didn't you, from memory? And what was that horse? Was that Skelton?
Oh God, yeah. It was. I remember you laughing at me. It was a horse that went from 9-4 to about 25-1 and ran accordingly. It was the controversial. I will get there.
I remember it because there was a lot of debate over it at the time.
Oh yeah, but yeah, basically, I thought it should have been. I thought it should have been the initial
Would
price.
have been one of the horses that won at Cheltenham. What was the horse that won at Cheltenham the whole time?
Yeah, yeah.
Langadan?
I'm not getting this.
Langadan?
Won the county hurdle. And
You're
just
done, no?
yeah,
Langadan?
Langadan. That's the
Yeah.
one. Anyway,
There you go.
basically, we don't know. It's all anecdotal, but I think they know exactly what they're doing. And
Just widening it out, I think that in national hunt racing, it is quite a serious problem. Is not so much horses being, and this is, I'm not relating this to this example, but generally, not horses not being stopped at all, but
Yeah,
horses
true.
being, but horses just not being in it to win it because they're preparing for another race,
Exactly,
because
and that
so
can
much
be.
racing is
I
rubbish
think a
and so
lot of that
little of the
is.
racing is good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's what we are saying. I think it's a fitness thing. Like you're prepping for a target,
Yeah,
and it's some people will have a more of an understanding of the level of fitness of a horse, and
yeah.
it's the same with handicapping in any discipline. It's you might be trying to win a race, but you might be running in suboptimal conditions. I always think, and it's like
Mm.
it's about understanding all the variables, and I think
Yeah.
that yard in particular are they're good at what they do essentially, and if they're staying within the rules with what they do, it's up to other people to interpret what they're doing. I always think it's
Yeah, and I think when you're sorry to hop on this subject, but I think when you're trying to bring new people into the sport as well, I think it's less than ideal that you discover, the way you can work out whether a horse is off is by looking at the market. That is less than ideal.
it is less than ideal because only some people can understand it properly.
Exactly.
It's
And
kind
if
of
you're a
I think it's
newbie,
quite handy for people if you can understand it. So
yeah,
it's
yeah, but for a
It's
sport that's trying to grow its interest in it
yeah.
itself, I think it's a problem.
my definition of a good trainer is a trainer who knows when his horse is going to win or go very, very close. And I think Skelton everyone says Skelton's a brilliant target trainer. But one area where I think the Cheltenham Festival is a negative is that, so, we're going to work back. When a trainer says, for example, we're going to work back from the county hurdle,
Yeah,
you probably know exactly what he's
yeah,
preparing.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't think that's a good look when
No.
he turns up on March the 13th. The horse has been
Yeah.
running the back down to favouritism, shits in. I think that's where the Cheltenham Festival is a negative for the sport.
It's real hard from a bookmaking point of view as well. Like it's nothing. If it's early in the season, October, November, you've some 5 runner race, and a couple of trainers have a couple of runners each, and it's the same. Probably the same with the even the just race shape wise, the Tony, the Jen, Yufton stuff. It's kind of like you just know any decent bet your lane's probably going to be a bad bet. That's like kind of the way. That's kind of the way I'd be thinking because which isn't conducive to I suppose a healthy market. But yeah, it's and as field sizes decrease, like with the fluctuations in price, you're talking about that Langadam example. So you won't want to be a bookmaker lane guaranteed prices on these races because you're just betting to
Mm.
under 100% on.
Yeah.
Like it's not good for anybody. Which obviously doesn't inspire confidence from a lay bet perspective to anybody essentially. But it's the nature of the beast, and it's in a sport where there's a couple of big days and there's a lot of crap days and there's less and less runners. I just can't see how it's not going to be more prevalent as it goes along, which is probably just not conducive to a healthy betting sport.
Indeed. Glenn Watkins is asking, are race sponsorship deals regulated? If so, how on earth did a firearms manufacturer that makes assault rifles, grenades, etc., get to sponsor 2 maiden hurdles at Chepstow last week? This is not a good look for the sport. So he's saying in reference to a crowd called Heckler and Koch, I think,
Yeah.
who are a firearms manufacturer, as he says, supplying weapons to the likes of NATO and other EU countries. So, Harry, any take on this?
So I'm massively, it's not a part of the rules I've ever had to look at, but I think I haven't managed to properly look. But someone very helpfully, Dave something, I think, tweeted a screenshot of the rules, which list all the things that you can't be sponsored by, and it appears that arms manufacturers, perhaps unsurprisingly, is one of them. So if they are arms manufacturers, there's probably needs to be a little bit of an investigation as to how that happened.
Jeez, we can't even call races. We'll settle you out in fucking 10 minutes.
I was going to say, yeah, you got, but that was political though, wasn't it? It wasn't under a rule. It was you were told that it was ruffling too many feathers, weren't you, essentially?
Well, if you, yeah, it was probably a complaint by the diggy in question, I'd say, and they were probably putting that into racing, probably more than we.
I'll just quickly read out what isn't acceptable. It said, under the BCAP code, the following products or services are listed as unacceptable. All tobacco products, betting systems and products that are intended to facilitate winning games of chance. I'm not sure, what does that mean? Breath testing devices or products which mask the effects of alcohol, guns and gun clubs, prostitution and sexual massage, obscene material, and pyramid and promotional schemes. But I'm not sure the betting systems and products are intended.
But also, pyramid schemes don't identify themselves as pyramid schemes. they don't like join our pyramid scheme.
The man was
it tends to be after the event that you discover that it's a pyramid scheme. Yeah.
If you're setting up a pyramid scheme, you can even call yourself Madoff and get away with it. So,
Made off with the money.
Anyway, thank you to the guy who sent in the did the research.
Yeah, I thought it was a great one. I mean,
it was very good spot.
I mean, it's bizarre.
Yeah, the race names were called the Heckler and Koch No Compromise Maiden Hurdle.
Gee, are you joking?
No compromise.
Called, yeah, no compromise.
Good God.
Fucking hell. It's probably lucky that hasn't been picked up wider. In fact,
yeah.
Well, hopefully it might. Now, I did ask the relevant BHA or sponsorship body for a comment on it, but I didn't get a response.
They're under a desk in a tin hat at the moment. Yeah.
No compromise. Dear me.
Yeah, fair, good question or good spot, Glenn. Thanks for that. Just read out this next one, lads. Question from James Scott, which I think was replied to by Tom Byrne from the BHA. So James was just asking, why does the head of racing at the BHA continually tweet trying to defend race programming? Seems very odd that they feel the need to defend decisions to individuals online, especially when the majority disagree with what they implement. Like increasing novice chases, etc. So Tom Byrne replied, I think BHA should be transparent where we can, whether we make a mistake, in brackets rare, good news, a misunderstanding, etc., or a question, or where a majority on social media anyway disagree, that we should respond to that or make our point public, which social media allows us to do. So he went on to say, often I learn something or I'm encouraged to think different by engaging. Other times I'll disagree and will back what we've done, and why it's a fine line between that and not being defensive. But I'd rather make our case / try changing some minds and fail than hide in the ivory tower. So fair play to Tom for getting back there, Tony.
Yeah, he is quite vocal on Twitter, trying to defend the policy around the novice chases and beginners chases, etc. And they've had some terrible luck. It must have been the Kempton today was a 2-runner race, and the only non-runner on the Kempton card is in that 2-runner race because it pulled off a shoe this morning, so it's not even ground related. So they had a lot of bad luck, and when they announced it, they did say it was a long-term initiative. But when you're getting 3 walkovers in 5 days, something's not right.
I think he
deserves credit for engaging, doesn't he? I don't understand that element of criticism at all.
I like he seems like a good egg, Tom. In fairness, like he's saying, I always like people who say you could learn something from this and you pick something up that you didn't consider and stuff like that. So
I think they're perhaps confusing. Why is he answering with answers that I happen to agree with? It's a good thing that someone in authority is engaging and explaining their decisions. I can't see.
He's been very helpful on other stuff that I ask him as well, in a wider betting and racing sense. So that's good.
I think the overall problem obviously is, sure, if you're on the fucking Titanic, you can probably only rearrange the deck chairs, can't you? Like there's not much you can do really until the structure changes, but that's not his fault.
Yeah, I've met Tom a few times. When I started in my job at the Racing Post on the production desk, I think I was replacing him. He'd left, and the first day I started at the Post, he'd been out on his leaving drinks the night before. I don't think he'll mind me saying this now because he's a good lad to be at the races. But yeah, I don't think I've ever seen someone so hungover that day. He'd been out for his leaving drinks with the team the night before, and his last day was training me basically. So I didn't learn much on that day. But Tom's good crack. I met him a few times at the races. And obviously doing well now at the BHA, so fair play. And thanks for getting back to us. Last question, lads. Nathan Stevens says, is proposed tax go ahead? Do you think we'll end up in a situation like the old betting shop tax days and all the value will be on course, leading to increased attendances and more vibrant betting rings? So a very positive potential view Nathan's taken there. AK, could you see anything in that?
No.
I just think betting shops are going to struggle just in general. I think it's quite important for me to point out, as we are now predominantly an online bookmaker, the value is on course. Happy to say that. The reason why it is on course is because bookmakers have less cost and to burdening them on course. So if you want a bigger price about your horses, you should go on course. Like there's no doubt about that, and I'm happy to say that as an online bookmaker as well, because it is fact. Online bookmakers, retail bookmakers have more cost to shoulder. I think betting shops really will struggle. It was quite interesting. I actually happened to be, after time Ansel, picking up a check from a Paddy Power shop the other day, and I was just waiting around to get the check essentially, and I was looking at a greyhound race on the screen. So I was just obviously having a look around the shop and seeing, I haven't been in a Paddy Power shop probably since the USPGA. And I was having a look around and I just saw the next greyhound race pop up on the screen, wherever it was, Central Park or whatever. And I was just looking at the overend, and I was just looking at it going, Christ almighty, the overend here is absolutely off the charts for this greyhound race. And I was like, my God, is that what they're taking now on greyhounds, like as a show price? And I went on our site in the shop, and I went on the Paddy Power site in the shop, and the prices of 5 of the 6 dogs were bigger on the show online than what they were in retail. So they were scalping. I remember that the race I was looking at in question, the fab was in the shop. The fab was evens, and the second fab was 7-4, and online they were 6-5 and 9-4. It was a different show that was in the shop compared to the Paddy Power online site, and my site was the same as the Paddy Power site, because it was a show price essentially. So I think that is what is happening. You get differential pricing in retail, basically because retail's just not making any money essentially, so they take more margin. And if you understand the margin, you don't bet in retail, and that's just the way it is. So I think you see more and more of that. I think. And I'm not signaling out Paddy Power, I think that is a retail thing. You see differential pricing in retail across the board, and it's not better than it is online. Never mind the racecourse where it is better anyway. And it's just something to factor in, and it's just probably why it's probably just why shops are going to struggle in the long term, I think, or even short term.
Well, with actions like that, they deserve to struggle.
To be honest with you, I understand your point there, Tony, as well, but I also think they are unbelievably burdened by cost. And what do? Do you just close the shops, which is probably what is going to happen? I think you probably do need differential pricing, to be honest with you. So I'm actually not even calling it out as it's just a reality of the cost burden, basically.
I would understand. I understand them doing different place terms in the shops to online, because online you've got to be more competitive, haven't you? I mean, it's kind of like, you're in a closed environment in the shop, but going even 7-4, about 6-4, and a 9-4,
6-5 it was, yeah.
6-5 and 9-4. I mean, that's pretty
the
low.
same as anything. It's the same in retail, to be honest with you. there's much worse offenders. Well, not that they're an offender, but there's other sites. I always find Ladbrokes. The Ladbrokes I was in Holborn literally had a sign on the wall. They didn't have any papers up. I think I was in there on a day where there was no racing in the evening, in fairness, whatever that day was last week, from the UK, and they had nothing. And it said that they had a sign on the wall where a betting shop display probably would be, saying there's more markets on. You can't do any of these markets on over the counter. They're all on the machine. Now, retail direct people towards the machine because the machines are very heavily marginated, like really heavily marginated. That's the way retail's gone, and it's probably just gonna eat itself. But it probably has to behave different to online, just based on the cost burden as well. In fairness, so I don't know. These are the consequences of expensive products and the knock-on effects. I think what you will see, you've seen previously in England prior to whatever it was, October 2001. The betting tax and things like that, where people added tax onto either winnings or stakes and stuff like that. I think in America they wrote it back very, very quickly. I think FanDuel did something similar, where if you have a bet, there's a surcharge of 50 cents for every bet you have, and obviously the feedback from that was unbelievably negative. You just put them surcharges in the price and people don't notice, or the majority of people don't notice. That's what will happen. That's what is happening. Roundabout way of saying just go on course if you want a better price, basically.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there, lads. Hopes and dreams of a podcast in an hour have failed miserably yet again, but good discussion nonetheless. All that's left to say is the usual. If you're having a bet this week, do check out the AK Bets Big Prices tabs for all the biggest events. Thanks to you for listening. Thanks to everyone who sent in a question, and thanks to the lads for their contributions. We'll be back again this time next week. Cheers.